So how do you feel?
I'm pretty excited right now.
Were you surprised at what happened today?
Yes, I was.
What went through your head when you heard the judge say acquittal?
I think I just went blank from that point on. I think everything just went out of my mind. I just couldn't believe that I was hearing that. I went blank.
Jeff, have you been told to bring your client with you today?
Yes, yes. I was told that we had a hearing, status hearing, I guess, and I thought maybe we were going to talk about the pre-sentence report and the mechanics of the sentencing that would be coming up and so forth.
And you seem pretty emotional when that happened. Still seem a little bit emotional now. Did you, I mean, when did it kind of dawn on you that this was effectively over for you?
I guess when you said that, I was going to be acquitted of these charges, I still was like, is this over? Is this really over? I still thought, oh my God, I cannot believe this. This is mean. You can't even imagine what I was thinking. So many things were crossing my mind at that time. But the biggest thing was, this is finally over.
So what do you do now?
I go find a job and just live my life finally after all these years with my children, my grandchildren, my family.
Well, the minimum sentence, even if you'd gotten the minimum, the absolute minimum, you would have had to go back for some amount of time. Did that weigh on you heavily? Was there...
Oh, yeah. After you've been in prison for 14 and a half years for a crime you didn't commit, knowing that there was a chance that you might have to go back, it was pretty scary. It was a pretty scary thought of thinking that I'm just getting reacquainted with my children and my grandchildren and my family, and then I would have to be taken away from them again. Sure, that weighed a lot on my mind. It was a really scary thing.
Back in '94, when the jury came back, what did you think was going to happen then?
I thought they would find me not guilty.
Who do you blame for this?
Well, it's not about who you blame. It's just about, I don't even know how to answer that question right now. I really don't.
We were talking about the fact that our justice system is not perfect, and the system can make mistakes, and we need more courageous judges like Judge Burge, who I think we all feel has impeccable class and integrity. For him to do the right thing in this case is a tribute to our legal system.
Oftentimes when people are ultimately acquitted of crimes that they didn't commit, there's lawsuits, there's requests for funding from the state, like a compensation program or something like that. So is that an avenue you guys intend to pursue, or is that something you discussed?
No, she hasn't even considered anything like that. The only thing that we've discussed is trying to get the message out to people in the community and throughout the United States that injustices sometimes occur in our legal system, and she's hoping that her story might help someone in the future not go through the injustice that she's gone through. There's a book out right now called Picking Cotton, and it's about a black gentleman who was identified by an eyewitness who was raped as the rapist, and he spent 15 years in prison. And through DNA evidence, it turned out that he was not the person who committed the crime. And so he and the victim became very close friends, and now they appear throughout the country talking about that experience that he went through and about her experience of convicting an innocent man for her rape. And they did write this book called Picking Cotton, and that's the type of thing that Nancy wants to do. She's hoping that she can get the message out that our system is not perfect and that we need to do everything we can to try to stop innocent people from being convicted, especially when there's no physical evidence. And that was the problem in this case. It was just based on children and not any physical evidence whatsoever.
Nancy, what would you say to the kids that leveled these accusations?
They're just victims of their own environment. I don't have anything to say to them or their parents or, how can I be angry at those kids? They were little children whose parents were telling them to say these things. Did they really know what they were saying? No. So, I don't have anything to say about them or toward them or to them.
You had been discussing filing a motion for a new trial based on some newly discovered evidence, and you've been somewhat reticent to talk about that. Can you tell us what new evidence now that you had uncovered that you thought might warrant a new trial?
I'm not going to go into specifics, but we did have a very well-respected expert who reviewed the testimony of all the children, including their taped interviews, and that expert was prepared to testify that the whole investigation had been contaminated because of the way these children were interviewed.
Do you intend to stay in Lorain?
I don't know. I haven't got that far yet.
Nancy, what were some of the darkest moments you had in the Reformatory?
I think it was just not being with my family, missing holidays, missing the birth of my grandchildren, missing the wedding of my children, my graduation, just, things that all parents want to be there for their kids, and knowing that I couldn't.
One of the things that I think was very devastating is they started an Innocence Project at the University of Cincinnati, and so I contacted the Innocence Project and asked them if they'd be willing to look at Nancy's case. Normally they only would take cases that involve DNA evidence, but they took a look at Nancy's case and they decided to accept it. So they worked on her parole, and they put together a package for her parole that was outstanding. They pointed out every discrepancy. They pointed out how unreliable the interview techniques were that were used with the children, and put together a great package to the parole board. I think that Nancy had a very strong hope based upon the efforts that they undertook on her behalf that she would get parole at her first parole hearing. And when she went in for her parole hearing, it was almost as if they disregarded all that information and said to Nancy, you have to admit what you did before we let you out. And if you don't do that, then you're in denial. And being in that position where you are being returned back to prison because you won't tell that agency what they want to hear, I think was very devastating to her, because it's almost like being a prisoner of war, where unless you agree to do what the enemy tells you to do, you're just going to have to go through more torture. And we were afraid that if she had to continue in prison for 60 years, that at some point they might get to make her do something that would not be the truth. And I think that's why it was so important to have her family and supporters out here, so that she was able to deal with the fact that the only way she was going to get out of prison is to admit to something she didn't do, and she just told me she would never do that.